Paulwell. Next is our Information Minister, Sandra Faulkner, Senator, and beside Minister is the Minister of Agriculture, Labor and Social Security, Honorable Derek Kellier, and next to him, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Donovan Stanbury. Minister Faulkner will give some opening remarks, as always, some of the decisions coming out of Cabinet. Then the respective ministers will make brief statements, and we will open up for questions thereafter. Over to you, Minister Faulkner.
Thank you very much, Lincoln. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We want to thank our viewers on the PBCJ and those on the World Wide Web who are joining us this morning. At first, I'm going to give you a few briefs from Cabinet, then I'm going to ask each of the ministers to give a brief overview of their portfolio and their sectoral presentation, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Cabinet has approved the following persons to serve on the National Housing Trust's Board of Directors for a 3-year term from the 3rd of April 2015 to the 2nd of April 2018. The persons are Chairman, Dr. the Honorable Carlton Davis, OJ. The Honorable Daisy Coke, OJ, she will be the Deputy Chair. Mrs. Scarlett Gillings, Senator Lambert Brown, Mr. Robert Boudin, Mr. Percival Latouche, Mrs. Jacqueline Lynn Stewart, Mrs. Lisa Harrison, Mr. Granville Valentine, Sergeant Raymond Wilson, Pastor Michael Harvey, Mr. Clayton Hall, Mrs. Sonia Hyman, and Mr. Martin Miller, who is the ex officio member. We also expect to name 3 other persons, and we will let you know of those in short order. Cabinet has approved a recommendation for the retroactive implementation of the Special Selection Housing Benefits for the Longville Park Phase 3 housing development. Cabinet has also issued drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council to facilitate the promulgation of this special benefits order. The effective date of the order is the 26th of August 2012. It will facilitate the allocation of 70 housing solutions at Longville to NHT contributors as follows: 20 solutions to young professionals born between 1975 and 1981. 1 solution for a police officer through the Ministry of National Security. 20 solutions to persons whose income placed them in the 1% and 3% income bands. 20 solutions to persons choosing to construct with alternate building systems, and 9 solutions for public sector workers. Longville Phase 3 has 918 housing solutions, including 1 and 2 bedroom and studio units, as well as serviced lots. Cabinet has approved the acquisition of land which is part of the Main Street in Yala, St. Thomas by the Ministry of Justice. The purpose of the acquisition is to correct an encroachment by the Yalas Resident Magistrates Court on adjacent private property. A surveyor's identification report revealed encroachment of about 171 square meters on the adjacent properties for work proposed by the Ministry of Justice as part of its improvement work to the physical infrastructure at the Yalas RM Court. The proposed work cannot be approved by the St. Thomas Parish Council until the encroachment is resolved. The Ministry of Justice is seeking to improve the physical infrastructure involved in the delivery of justice services. The expansion work will include a filing room and private sanitary facilities for the resident magistrates. In furtherance of a CARICOM decision for Jamaica to be the headquarters of the Caribbean Regional School of Art, Cabinet has ratified the decision that this be done through the enhancement of the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts. Cabinet has also approved a Ministry of Education financial obligation of $4,300 for the initial phase of the project, which will involve a diagnostic test of the college. The government of Cuba will provide 2 experts to conduct the diagnostic test, and the contribution by the Ministry of Education will cover the cost of air travel, meals, transportation, and other logistic arrangements. The work being done in the initial phase will determine the overall cost for implementing the Caribbean Regional School of Art, as well as determine the requirements for its establishment. Cabinet has approved a new Board of Management for the St. Joseph's Hospital. The 15-member board, under the chairmanship of Professor Archibald MacDonald, will serve for a 2-year period to March 2017. The board is charged with ensuring efficient delivery of high standards of health services in the hospital and to develop a set of recommendations on feasible strategies for its sustainability through the public-private partnership model. And we can give you the other names of the board, the names of the other board members. A new Board of Management has also been approved by Cabinet for the Bellevue Hospital. That board will serve for 3 years to March 2018, and it will be chaired by Dr. Winston Delahaye. And Cabinet has approved the appointment of a new board for the Firearm Licensing Authority, the FLA, with the retention of the current chairman, Robert Gregory, and deputy chair, Gilbert Scott. The other members are Justice Marva McIntosh, Rosalie MacDonald Barker, and Pastor Michael Harvey. The board will serve for 3 years. And now we open the floor, and we will start with Minister Paulwell, the Minister of Science, Technology, Energy, and Mining.
Thank you very much, colleague ministers. Good morning, members of the media. I'll just start by firstly introducing 3 of our staff members. I think they are significant enough to be introduced to the public, and you've already met Ms. Forbes, Ms. Joaquin Murray, who is on my left. She is also another of our Chief Technical Director, and she's in charge of the technology side. But I also want to introduce Dr. Cliff Riley. On my right, he's the new head of the Scientific Research Center, a body that has taken on greater energy, activism, as we move to popularize the use of science and technology, and to get us to focus a lot more, to become preoccupied with S&T, especially in our business sector, focusing on the small and medium-sized business. So we want to welcome Dr. Riley on board. And of course, you would have heard about the new CIO, the Chief Information Officer for the entire government. Dr. Louis Shalal is here. He is here from Canada. He has tremendous experience in this area as Jamaica now tries to achieve some of the objectives of e-government, to enable the government to be a lot more uniform in its utilization of ICTs, to develop standards across the government, to enable our people to have greater access to the government, and for the more efficient delivery of service across the government. Quite a tremendous responsibility, and he's going to be the CIO, not for the Ministry of STEM, but for every government agency, ministry across the government. So it's quite a tremendous responsibility he has undertaken. I'll just say a few words about the sectoral debates. As the House Leader, I'm pleased with the fact that we have imposed timelines on presentations. I think by far the presentations are more interesting. I know some members of the media chastised us some time ago about curtailing the parliamentary time, but I believe that we are much more focused and the presentations are more interesting. I was a little bit disappointed with the treatment of my PowerPoint presentation last week. One of the ways to get the Jamaican people more involved in Parliament is for them not to see static presentations. I'm sure they would have thought that I got up and gave a speech, not realizing that so much of the information, so much of the interesting part, it's not about looking at me on TV, but to see the video clips on some of the various areas of the ministry. And as we move into the other debate, which is the constituency debate, and I really have to remind my parliamentary colleagues, especially on the opposition side, because I still don't believe that they understand that we are not dealing with constituency matters now. When it comes to constituency matters, we're going to have the Ministry of Finance present. We are going to be taking detailed notes, and we also want to use technology. So if you have a bad road, put it on the screen. Let us view it by video. You will even be able to get your people to speak to the Parliament using video clips, again, to make the experience in Parliament far more interesting, not for us who have to sit there and go through the speeches, but for the public who we are trying to entice to appreciate that we are doing their work and they need to be informed and to be kept apprised. I'm not going to say much more about my presentation. Res ipsa loquitur speaks for itself, and I'll be able to take any questions that you might wish to ask.
Minister Kelly?
Thank you, Minister Faulkner, our colleague, Minister Paul, and officials of the Ministry of Labour, Social Security, Agriculture, and members of the media. Good morning. In yesterday's presentation in the sectoral debate, I sought to outline a clear vision and strategy for putting the agricultural sector once and for all on a sustainable footing. That is, the capacity to attain higher levels of production and productivity on a sustained basis. And this is within the context of a sector that is dominated by small players on small plots of land, high dependency on rainfall, and poor infrastructure, and low levels of technology. The above factors have caused disruption of the growth momentum in times of extreme weather episodes. For example, last year the sector grew by 15% in the first 6 months, which was reversed by the severe drought in the final 6 months, resulting in annual production remaining flat. Happily, as a result of our interventions, preliminary figures for the first quarter of 2015 shows a 2.6% increase in domestic agricultural crop production. The question is, how do we sustain that, given the reality of our agricultural landscape and climate change? How do we maintain the momentum in terms of the 4.5% decline in the food import bill last year? Our major strategy is to bring on board large acreages of lands, public and private, outfitted with the appropriate infrastructure, such as irrigation, drainage, roads, handling facilities, and place in the hands of farmers and investors and link these to the market. This is our agropark concept. Consistent with this concept, we have established 9 agroparks in the last 2 years that covered some 754 hectares of crops and livestock, with the production of 1.7 million kgs of produce and employing some 1,428 persons. Our commitment for this year and going forward is to complete infrastructure works in the existing agroparks, which will bring these parks fully into production after we expend approximately $418 million. And we intend to establish new agroparks in Onslow, Spring Ground, Nonsuch Unity, Seven Rivers, Enfield, and Sunderland. Another and safeguard agricultural lands, and an effective perennial disaster prevention program. At the same time, we continue to support our traditional sugar, cocoa, bananas, and coffee sectors, where the government has largely ceased its commercial involvement through divestment and providing the appropriate policy, regulatory, and development support. In this regard, we continue to support the Cane Expansion Fund, which now stands at some $1.8 billion. And this year we'll be rehabilitating some 80 kilometers of road at a cost of over $700 million. We also continue to support the sugar-dependent communities, and this year we will complete some 313 houses for farmer barrack dwellers. Over 80 social projects ranging from schools, clinic, water supplies, sporting facilities and community centers will be done, and we will train some 600 mainly young people in entrepreneurship. In relation to the fisheries sector, we will be bringing a new fisheries bill to the Parliament this year, and we will continue with our conservation efforts through our fish sanctuaries, as well as establish management plans for the sustainable exploitation of a number of species, including sea cucumbers. Against the background of the pressure on our marine resources and the high level of importation of fisheries products, we will be supporting the expansion of aquaculture in our agri-parks, as well as through other private investments. The Ministry will, in short order, be presenting a sustainable management regime for the Pedro Keys, which has been a very topical subject over these many weeks. In respect to the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, we are embarked on a labour market reform and productivity enhancement in an effort to consolidate the gains that we have made over the past year. Everyone is well aware by now that we have established our Labour Market Reform Commission. The work of the Jamaica Productivity Center continues. The Labour Market Information System, which is a very important part of the structure of labour market reform, is working well, and persons in the wider society are registering, both persons seeking employment as well as employers. The Labour Market Reform Commission is chaired by Dr. Marshall Hall, and he has a team of 18 persons to work with in that regard. The work of the Industrial Relations Department continues apace, and I'm sure the media will note that the country has been at its quietest in the last 5-6 years when it comes to the industrial scene. The word strike has disappeared from the vocabulary of the Jamaican worker, and it is a sign that investors would be happy with, both local and foreign, because disruption at the workplace is not conducive to productivity, and hence the Industrial Relations section has been doing a tremendous job, and we continue to upgrade training in that area as well. There is concern about the legislation, and having been able to bring the flexi work arrangements to completion, as well as the disabilities bill, we intend during this year, at all costs and whatever it takes, the Occupational Safety and Health Act will be brought to the Parliament, and we expect a smooth passage for it. We continue with a robust overseas employment program. Canada taking the lead. We have over 8,000 odd workers employed in that local, and another approximately 6,000 in the United States. These programs have been of tremendous benefit to the country in terms of remittances, and the figures have been put out in the documents that we have tabled in the Parliament. We have been working towards the setting up of the structure that will take the disability sector into a more formidable organization. We are going to be setting up the tribunal this year and making the JPCD into an agency that will be able to stand on its own 2 feet. We recognize the importance of that sector, and we want to ensure that they have all the coverage and all the rights that they are entitled to. The National Insurance Fund is of concern to some persons out there, and rightly so, but the government is taking all the steps necessary at this time, having received the actuarial report and laid it in the Parliament, to ensure that we see to the proper development and the continuity of the program, notwithstanding the fact that right now we have a gap of some $3 billion between the funds we extend to our clients as against the contributions that we receive. And as such, we intend to make those amendments when the Cabinet gets the report from the committee that is looking into the whole business of the actuarial report. Poverty alleviation, we continue to focus on the vulnerable, which is the center of our program within the Social Security section. And the PATH program continues to be the flagship program of the government. This year, over some $4.3+ billion will be expended to support that sector. So generally, right across the board, we have doing our social intervention programs to ensure that all the sectors within the ministry is taken care of. And finally, the whole business of the support for the senior citizens will be of particular focus this year. Everyone would know that the aging population is of a great concern to us at the ministry, and we are laying plans as of now to see how we can pave the way for what we recognize in the future based on the statistics. We will somehow in another 20-25 years have more old people than young people in the country. So we have to make sure we start from now to set the framework for the interventions that are to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We open the floor for question, the usual. I saw Andre's hand up first. Remember, one question and a follow-up. We ask you to stick to that, please.
My question is for you, Minister.
Sure.
Can you say what is the wisdom behind Cabinet's decision to reappoint some of the members of the former NHT board, given the controversy that surrounded the previous board?
Well, as you may know, Andre, that the NHT board, there are certain specific stipulations that they should come from unions and so on. And I believe that those considerations were taken. Your follow-up?
Yes, but certainly there are other persons that you could have found to fulfill some of the stipulations that would have been set out in the NHT Act.
But remember, unions are represented, and unions will also recommend their persons as well.
Which I'm thinking the government would have the discretion to either confirm that person or to say not at this time.
It's a strong board. We believe that it is a strong board that will carry out the mandate of the NHT, and I believe that is what is important.
Isn't it peculiar though?
Andre,
one final follow-up.
would you allow your colleagues and then we can come back to you?
Isn't it peculiar though that the persons who you have reappointed from the previous board would have been persons who are, let me choose my word carefully, who are somewhat aligned to the People's National Party?
Well, those persons, as you would have recalled, those persons remained on the board even after some other persons had resigned. We are naming 3 other persons to the board, and those other persons will also include union representation.
That's a question I was about to ask. Has there been any appointment, any nominee from big trade unions like the Bustamante Industrial Trade Union? Despite that, I've not heard you mention anybody.
No, they have not been mentioned. And we will, remember I said there are 3 additional persons to be named, and we will inform you once those confirmations are made. Oh, I'm sorry.
Carol,
we're going to go over here
Carol
first. Carol.
It's with keen interest that I have noticed you have named Sergeant Raymond Wilson,
Yes.
head of the Police Federation. Is this not a conflict of interest with his job to serve, reassure, and protect, to be a member of the board? Could you explain that?
Can you explain to me why you think it would be a conflict?
He's a police officer.
No, but police officers, he's also head of the police union. I can't imagine why it would be a conflict.
And he
of
is a
interest.
member of the NHT board.
And what is wrong with that? Are you saying that
not
police
another?
officers should be precluded from
For
serving
those of us
on
who
national
came from
boards?
Mars, could you explain to me and the rest of the public,
Well,
how does this work? How does a police officer now become a member of the NHT board? Could you explain
well, a
to me
police
that?
officer can
Very
become a
naive.
member of any board that a minister, unless it is in direct conflict with the work he does as a police officer. I don't believe that the work Mr. Wilson does as head of the Police Federation puts him in conflict with being on the NHD board.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go to Hopetown and then we'll come back to you, Michelle.
Thank you,
Hopetown?
Minister. Minister, we heard the report of the Auditor General, and it has a cursory glance at the report to date has unearthed some very...
Hopetown, I'll just, since you've come up on it, the NHD will be responding to the Auditor General's report. They are reviewing the report. Hold on. They are reviewing the report, and once they have reviewed the report, they will have responses to the report, and we will make those responses public. We will have some kind of press event for that, and we hope that it will be done in short order.
So you're trying to kill comment on that right now?
No, I'm not killing comment, but I can't comment on it. The NHT has to comment on the details of it. And
Minister,
please,
with due respect, Minister, it
Yeah.
is now in the public domain.
that I'm
And
quite aware
it's of
of.
tremendous public interest,
What?
Minister. And I'm here to protect the interest of the public. I'm sorry if you don't think that.
As
you're
all
laughing,
of
Minister,
us
but
are,
not a
as
laughing
all
matter,
of us
Minister.
are, Hopetown. What do,
Minister, I just want to say, Minister, that you have the Prime Minister, whoever it is, and the Cabinet, whoever, in their wisdom, have reappointed some number of persons who, quote unquote, have been tainted by the events of the last board.
no, but I think you
And
ought
Minister,
to look
hold
at
on.
the report, and I think
All
that you're entering dangerous territory, Hopetown, and I think you need to
All right, Minister,
watch your words
I'll
very
take your
carefully.
guidance. I just want to ask the Agriculture Minister, because let's deal with that. Deal with a little agriculture. It's more agricultural. You want to deal with, Minister.
I don't
Minister.
want that ABCA has to save your skin from a lawsuit, you know, so you better be careful.
That's all right. We have both have legal training. Minister, Minister Kelly, you indicated that the agro parks are well irrigated some time ago, and we had a little drought, and as a result of the drought, domestic crop production fell from 14% as it was to negative 4-point-something%. If I'm wrong, do correct me, okay? However, on page, could I just draw your attention to page bullet number 12 on this booklet, sir? Could I just direct your attention to bullet number 12 on this document here, sir? It's a well laid out document. I must comment on it, sir. Bullet number 12, sir. There's no page number, so I can't.
There is.
Bullet number
Yes,
12.
there are page numbers. Look at
Yeah,
along
sir.
the side.
Well, Well, I don't know if that's page. Sorry, it's a little bit modern for me, so I think it's a bullet number. Sorry. Page number 12. So
this?
No, I just want to make sure we're on the right page. That's why I'm just preambling until you find it. Are you on the right page, Minister?
Ask a question.
Okay. All right. The question is, you are dispersing an additional 269 million for cane production, cane expansion.
What's your question? Go ahead with your question.
No, I just want to make sure the minister is hearing me.
But he's
all right.
hearing you.
For cane expansion, Minister. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Minister. Okay, Minister. The EU has advised us that the preferential market that we had for cane has been either suspended or about to be suspended, or it's on a lifeline based on the last extension. What is your rationale for putting $269 million into cane at this time when it has been privatized?
Well, the sugarcane industry is much more diverse today than it was 20 years ago. We are now into the business of producing ethanol. We are into the business of cogeneration, etc., etc., etc. Yes. That's sugar cane production. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about the production of sugar now. We are into sugar cane, a sugar cane industry, which is a different thing. It encompasses some of that, but it is much wider. So when we used to, for argument's sake, dispose of the bagasse that came from the sugar cane, the cane farmer would not benefit from that. He will now be able to benefit from it because of the changes that are being made, because we are now moving to cogeneration, and that is what is being used. So he will now benefit from all of the cane that he sells. So it's not only the juice that goes into making the sugar and the molasses and so on and so forth. It is much wider. So when we are moving towards building out based on the amount of the markets that exist for the sugar cane, we have to expand the production because we are way down, right? And that is why the investors are putting in their money in such large quantities into the sugarcane industry, because this is not just about producing sugarcane. It's a much more lucrative market outside sugarcane, outside of cane being used for sugar purposes only. So it's much more lucrative.
Hopeton, have a little. Hopeton.
Yes.
We're going to go to Michelle. We'll come back to you. You must respect your colleagues, please. Michelle.
Thank you, Minister. I wanted to Minister Faulkner first and then to Minister Kelly. Minister Faulkner wanted to follow up on a question that my colleague, Mr. Spalding, asked. You mentioned that there are 3 additional members still to be appointed to the NHT board, but as it relates to the 2 major trade unions, is it that an invitation was extended and offered to for one member to serve?
No, I won't go into that. I can't go into that. There are 3 additional members to be named, and we expect that among those members to be named, we'll have at least 1 trade union.
Okay.
And we leave it there. But I won't go into invitations or confirmations yet. I don't think it's appropriate.
All right. Minister Kelly, just wanted an update as to whether, as Minister of Labour now, as it relates to the flexi work arrangement, is the ministry actively monitoring that, and can you give the latest update as it relates to members of the private sector that probably have come on board in terms of the arrangement since, and whether you have any complaints as to matters of victimization that was raised initially when the debates were going on? Can you give an update as to how it is working, the latest you have?
Well, from all indication, what you have now, we did a sensitization program. So our legal officers and other senior directors went around the island for a period of time in town centers to have discourse with the public. I myself kicked off the series of meetings in Western Jamaica, starting at the Montego Bay Civic Center to bring employers on board and to sensitize employees as to their rights and their responsibilities within a flexi work arrangement program. It has been going well so far. The objections that were initially raised from some quarters have dissipated because they now understand the benefits that can be derived from this kind of arrangement. It allows for more time for workers to complete their scheduled 40-hour work and be able to enter into other arrangements so that they can earn more money and they can have more family time as well, which is desperately needed in this country, and so on and so forth. So really, the public relations apparatus of the ministry has been doing a significant amount of work to sensitize the people, and from all indications, the unions are fully on board. The Jamaica Employers Federation of tripartite is working together on this issue because it will be beneficial to the country in the long run if we get everybody on board. And I hear really no dissenting voices, and like I said, those that were concerned, their voices have gone silent.
And Michelle, I just want to remind you of something. Also remember that the following persons were persons who were added to the board in late last year. The Honorable Daisy Coke, Sergeant Raymond Wilson, Pastor Michael Harvey, and Mr. Clayton Hall. Those were added to the board. You remember to make the quorum. So it was expected that those persons would have been reappointed. And the new members of the Honorable Carlton Davis, Jacqueline Lynn Stewart, Lisa Harrison, and Granville Valentine are new members. So there are 4 persons from the very first board. No, I just said there are 4 persons from the very first board, and he would have been included in that. Hopetoun, I'm going to ask you though, have some respect for your colleagues. Don't just interject. There is a process that we're using. Everybody else is following the rules. Kindly do so. We're going to ask you to just observe the rules and be respectful. Thank you. Alfeo.
Yes, Alfea Saunders from the Jamaica Observer. Minister, my question is unrelated. Are you able to say at this point what the cost of hosting President Obama was to the government?
We are not completed. We have not completed all the numbers yet, but what I can tell you is that for the roadworks, it's just under $208 million, and for the other costs, which would include media and security, currently we have a figure of about $60 million, but we are refining those figures against budget. So I will be able to give you something by Friday or next week. Gary.
Yes, Minister of Agriculture, can I revert to that portfolio? As it relates to AgroPark, are you satisfied with the current state of the 9 AgroPark that are in existence at this time?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean if I'm satisfied. They are in different stages of development.
All right, let me be a little bit more specific. Yeah. Let me be a little more specific. I was told that the AgroPark in St. Catherine is not near where the others are, say, in other parishes. Okay. So I'm wondering, I'm told that the irrigation system is in disarray and nothing is really happening. Is it true?
Yeah, well, like I said, some agro-parks are more advanced than others because of when they started and the issues surrounding one of the critical things, which is the irrigation system. Agro-parks can't operate without irrigation, otherwise the production won't be sustainable. In the Spring Plains Agro-Park, the irrigation system there has been completed recently, and that is going to serve a large acreage of land. In Ebony Park, there were some problems out there, but that is now sorted out. and they are back on track. But generally speaking, in New Forest, Duff House, that system is working properly, and there's a lot of production there. Out in Yalas, doing quite well, as you can see from the outcomes. In the PGR as well, irrigation system has now been put in place, and we are moving at pace to get them in all the other places that where we are doing agricultural production. In all the new ones that we propose to do as well, we are seeking to outfit them with all the necessary infrastructure to make them viable, because this is the flagship program of the ministry, and we intend to make all these agro-parks viable 100%, whatever it takes. Because if we do that, we can sustain the level of production and productivity even in the face of worse droughts. You know, you can't predict what will happen under climate change, but we are moving to hedge against any future droughts of the ones that we suffered last year. And it is a tremendous credit that we were down to 33% thereabouts in terms of what happened after the drought, and to return to a 2.6 in the first quarter. It means if you come from minus 33 to plus 2.6, it tells you what the math says as to the rebound that has taken place. And the agro-parks have been mainly responsible for this because they are equipped. But we're moving in stages. We're putting in packaging houses, we're putting in equipment to ensure the land preparation and so on can move apace. We're dealing with global gap certification for them to ensure that the whole business of traceability and you know, those other things associated can be in place to put us on the cutting edge when it comes to the export, international exports. So we are moving apace, but all of them are not at the same level. We intend this year, in the budget that we have for this year, to get them up to speed.
Good morning, Abkafit Henley, Nationwide News. Question to the Information Minister. The Industry Minister had said that Cork Systems and Anchor Finance have expressed interest in investing in Jamaica, quote, just over $5 billion. He said that on March 11. Now, in a statement yesterday, the certainty of it was kind of reduced when the minister said, essentially, an MOU has been signed for a possible US $5 billion investment. I'm curious, what was represented to Cabinet in terms of just the nature of the interest and the firmness of...
Well, I can tell you it was always an MOU to talk. It was always an expression of interest. As a matter of fact, the final wording of the MOU was done last week, April 13, and that was done after consultations with the Attorney General. And it was always a discussion that the non-binding MOU would require a 30-day period in which certain assessments would be done through the DBJ, the Ministry of Finance, and those assessments would include whether or not the money was available, whether or not the money was from sources that we would find acceptable, and if the persons who were part of this company were fit and proper. Those were the discussions that were held at the Cabinet, and my colleagues can attest to that. I wasn't actually there last week for the final wording of the MOU. Were you there? You were at Cabinet last week. So those were the discussions. Okay. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I was asking
sorry. Sorry, Philip. Sorry.
What figure, though, was represented to Cabinet by Minister Hilton?
No, but this is a discussion. It was always a non-binding agreement. Always.
Was a figure mentioned?
Yes, there was a figure. That the figure was that they said they had $5 billion to invest, but saying that you have $5 billion to invest. We have to do the due diligence. So the MOU, as we said, was always, the discussions were always for a non-binding MOU and for the discussions to take place.
All right. It seems to me an unusual process, yes? I'd have thought a potential investor expressing interest in putting money into a project.
It's not unusual. We have done non-binding MOUs before.
May I complete the question?
Sure.
I'd have thought an investor interested in pumping funds into a project in Jamaica would have been reasonably expected to have had the credentials up front. Why give Cork
not at all?
No, I have had reports that there is great dissatisfaction in relation to how Minister Hilton.
Well, I think you should quote those sources, but I'm not prepared to comment on it at all.
What's your view?
I don't give my personal views at this table. As I've often said, I report on cabinet decisions.
Thanks, Abka. Andre. We're going to take three questions after, and then we will wrap up. Andre.
Mr. Powell, the Postmaster General yesterday announced that about 60% of postal points across the country will need to be closed because, one, their budget has been inadequate, and they've also been unable to self-finance. Can you explain to me why we got to that stage if we were left behind with all the development that was taking place, for example, in the United States, and as Technology Minister, should that have been introduced to our postal system?
Well, firstly, no decision has been taken by the government of Jamaica in relation to the termination of any service in the postal services. We have a staff position that we are studying. One important aspect of it will commence in May, which is to engage some debate, because these proposed changes can't happen without full consultation. The post office is an institution in our country, so all members of parliament that could be affected will have to be brought within that discussion, and the people from the various communities. It is acknowledged that with technology, and we've been saying this for many years, when I opened recently a community access point in St. James, and a lady of 78 years was able to demonstrate that she could send an email to a relative in Liverpool, which used to take 3 weeks to go and for a response to come back and by mail, and now to be able to get a response to say the money is on its way in 5 minutes. It shows what technology has done. We are very aware and conscious of those persons who depend on the post office even now, the pensioners and so on. So whatever we do, we have to make sure that we cater to those needs. One of the proposals is, for example, to look at mobile services again in a more concentrated way. All of these things now are on the table, and we expect that shortly the cabinet will be properly briefed and a decision taken, but very importantly, there has to be consultation.
Yeah, but the Postmaster General yesterday made it appear that this was very urgent and was very critical because they're running a deficit of $500 million per year. Yes. And so they're saying they can't keep some of these post offices open.
Yes, the deficit has been going for about 5 years, so we're very much aware of that. What we don't want is to venture into the transformation that will see dislocation, unnecessary dislocation. And in some areas, it is still acknowledged that the government, because we have treaty obligations, because there's something called universal service, so that if somebody in Italy were to send a letter here, by our treaty obligation, we have to deliver that letter to Catadupa. So those are conditions that we have to abide with. And so therefore it has to be a much wider consultation and discussion that we're engaged in now.
We take the final question from Alfeo.
Minister Paulwell, do you have a timeline in terms?
Yes, I suspect that we won't have any radical changes to the postal system before the next financial year. So we will undertake these discussions during this financial year. In relation to those post offices that are identified as going to remain regardless, because there are a number of post offices that we will continue to have. Some of them are in need of repairs, and that's why the allocation has been made.
And we take the final question from ABCO. All right, just project a bit. No, just project. We'll hear you. Do we have the other microphone, please? Go ahead, though, ABCO. I can hear you.
They want it on the record.
Barack Obama came here recently, Minister, and spoke about transparency in government, which I gather we all endorse. Is the Simsimela administration prepared to make available to the public this agreement to talk, as you have described it, this memorandum of understanding signed last night with Cork?
It's a matter I would not be able to, it's a matter we would have to discuss. We don't know. I have not seen the final agreement. I don't know what is in it. If there are not issues in it that would be business-oriented information that would affect the companies, I am sure that we would not have a difficulty in making aspects of the MOU public.
You would agree, though, Minister, that we have a right to know?
Absolutely, the country has a right to know, but it is a matter I can check on and I will let you know. You absolutely have a right to know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, ABCO.
Thanks.
On.